The room was dark and still, save for the faint hum of an old clock ticking, breaking the silence every second. Shadows danced across the walls, pulled by the dim light of a street lamp flickering outside. For Alex, it was just another restless night in a long string of them. He thought it was stress at first, the long days, the endless pressures of life. But tonight felt different. Something in the air, something unspeakable, clung to the room like a thick fog, refusing to be ignored. Alex stared at the ceiling, the silence stretching on. He tried to calm his racing mind, but it was no use. The longer he lay there, the more he felt it, an oppressive weight in the room, a presence watching from the shadows. When Alex finally drifted off, it was a relief, a temporary escape from the overwhelming tension. But the relief didn't last. He awoke with a start, eyes wide open, heart pounding. Something had yanked him from the depths of sleep. His phone flashed, casting a brief light across the room, showing the time. 3:33 a.m. He froze. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the time, though. That was strange enough. It was the air, the thick, suffocating silence that had taken over the room. Alex lay there, motionless, listening. The clock ticked, as if it knew the terror was just beginning. Alex tried to shake it off, to convince himself it was just a bad dream, just his imagination. But the weight in the room remained. He glanced around nervously, searching the corners, the shadows, but there was nothing there. At least, nothing he could see. The next few nights it happened again, at exactly 3:33 a.m. The same feeling of being watched, that same pressing unease. Alex's attempts to sleep grew more desperate. Each night, the fear clawed deeper into his chest. Then one night, it wasn't just the sensation anymore, it was something real. The chair, always positioned in the far corner, seemed a little closer to the bed the next morning. Alex thought nothing of it at first, chalking it up to his own mind playing tricks. But then he heard the scraping sound, a faint, almost imperceptible noise, like something scratching against the walls. He got out of bed to investigate, heart pounding. But when he opened the closet, everything was in its place. There was nothing out of the ordinary, except the feeling. It lingered, thick and heavy. Then it happened. It was subtle at first, a faint glowing light coming from the corner of the room. Alex's tired eyes barely registered it until he blinked, and there, in the shadows, those eyes. Two eyes, glowing faintly like the embers of a dying fire, watching, waiting. They didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. Alex's heart raced. He could feel his pulse in his throat, each beat louder than the last. He squeezed his eyes shut, convinced it was a trick of the light. But when he opened them again, the eyes were still there. Closer now, just at the foot of the bed. Alex's breath caught. His body was frozen, incapable of movement, but the eyes, those eyes, they never left. The next morning, Alex tried to convince himself it was just a dream. He spent hours researching sleep disorders, trying to find some rational explanation. Night terrors, sleep paralysis, anything to explain away the terror. But it didn't help. He couldn't shake the feeling of those eyes, constantly lingering at the edge of his thoughts. Desperate, Alex turned to online forums, hoping someone else had experienced the same thing. What he found only deepened the terror. Stories of people waking up at 3:33 a.m., seeing glowing eyes, feeling the presence of something unseen, something ancient, and always followed by disappearances. The words of one cryptic message chilled Alex to the bone. If you see them, don't stare too long. Don't let them touch you. Once they've claimed you, there's no escape. The message seemed harmless enough at first, until Alex realized it wasn't just a warning. It was a plea, a cry for help from someone who had already been marked. Alex became obsessed, researching more, staying awake longer. But the closer it got to 3:33 a.m., the more his body betrayed him. Exhaustion always won, and sleep took over. The next morning, Alex woke up with bruises on his arms, deep and raw, as if something had gripped him in the night. He tried to tell himself it was nothing. Maybe he had scratched himself in his sleep. But the marks were too deliberate, too real. Desperate for answers, Alex set up a camera, determined to catch whatever was haunting him. He sat on the edge of the bed, the clock ticking loudly, his eyes fixed on the time as it drew closer to 3:33 a.m. The room grew colder, the shadows lengthening, as if the darkness itself was creeping closer. 3:32. The air grew thick with something unnatural. 3:33. The camera flickered, and there in the darkness, the eyes. He was not alone anymore. The eyes gleamed in the shadows, their intensity growing, their presence suffocating. Alex's breath caught, and his heart skipped a beat. He tried to speak, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive air. The creature stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, until its form began to take shape. Sunken eyes, gaunt features, a twisted smile curling at the edges of its lips. Alex tried to speak, tried to plead, but the words caught in his throat. It was too late. He was already marked. Soon, the lights flickered, the shadows grew longer, and the eyes multiplied. Now, they were everywhere. The camera began to glitch, capturing only static until, suddenly, Alex's wide eyes filled the screen, frozen in terror. The last thing he saw was the creature's hand reaching toward him. The screen went black. When Alex's friends arrived, they found the room empty. The bed was made, the chair undisturbed. The clock, frozen at 3:33 a.m. The police reviewed the camera footage, but all that was left was static, except for one frozen frame. Alex's terrified face locked in a moment of pure fear, staring at the camera, while faint glowing eyes appeared in the reflection. And the clock, it ticked again. 3:33 a.m. Someone else would wake up tonight. Someone else would hear the whispers.